Now, Landry-French, if I'm not mistaken, is a 100% employee-owned company, ESOP. How does that work? Now, when you got the call on a Sunday night and you committed to building this thing in 90 days, did you really believe you could build it in 90 days? I'd like to welcome our listeners to the Boulos Beat podcast. I'm your host, Greg Boulos. The Boulos Company is Northern New England's largest commercial real estate services firm with offices in Portland, Maine, and Manchester and Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We've been selling and leasing real estate in Maine and New Hampshire since 1975. This podcast is designed to provide insight into Maine's business movers and shakers. On today's podcast, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Kevin French, Chairman and CEO of Landry-French Construction. With locations in Scarborough, Maine, and Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Landry-French employs over 60 people. It's a 100% employee-owned company, otherwise known as an ESOP. Landry-French Construction was founded at the tail end of the Great Recession in 2010 by Kevin and his partner, Denis Landry. Now, 12 years later, we find ourselves in what we hope is the tail end of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet Landry-French is going stronger than ever. Kevin is 58 years old, married to Augusta, and has 4 children. Megan, who is 33, Cameron, who is 31, Helen, who is 20, and Noah, who is 17. And Kevin's wife, Augusta, is from Chicago. I love to say that. Welcome to the Boulos Beat. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, you've got so many children, and any of them express interest in coming into the business?
I actually, my son, Cameron, 33, he's 31 now. He came into the business and he wanted to go quickly to the top spot, be a superintendent at the time, and he was like 24.
You wanted to ascend to the throne?
He wanted to go right to it. And he said, my other friends who has parents in the construction industry, put them at the top. And I said, you're going to work your way up and you're going to pay your price. And he left the company and he's doing his own thing now. And if he was going to come into the business, he had to make his respect and for the process and earn his way up.
Yeah, I mean, if you had put him in a position of authority right off the bat, you really would be doing him a disservice because A, he wouldn't know really what he was doing, and B, the crew would lose respect for you and for him.
Absolutely. And I know that. He didn't know that. And someday a light bulb will go off in his head and he'll say, I understand what my father is doing now.
Do you think at some point in the future he'll come back?
I don't know. I'll leave that up to him. It would depend on if he wanted to come back, what has he learned in between? And I'm not going to put anybody in a position in my company unless they earned it or have the knowledge to be where they're at. The right people, the right seats.
That's smart, very smart. Kevin, you used to work for Pizzagalley Construction before you started.
I did.
Landry-French, right?
I did.
With Denis. I remember the first time I met you, if you don't mind me relating that story. We were at a broker's meeting. Every Tuesday morning at the Boulos Company, have a broker's meeting.
8 o'clock in the morning, if I remember
No,
right.
it used to be 7. Now we're softer now. It's 7:30.
Okay.
But it would go from 7 to 9, and then we would have maybe a guest speaker or somebody wanted to make a presentation to us. And I guess you had asked to come in and talk about Pizzagalley's capabilities. Pizzagalley's a big contractor.
Yeah.
And you came in and you made a pitch. And I think Brother Joe was there. I think Paul Urenick was there. And
Morris Fisher.
Morris Fisher, that's right.
Yeah.
And I remember after the meeting, we were very impressed with the presentation. And Joe and I were about to construct a 20,000 square foot office building out behind the main mall. And we both looked at each other and just kind of nodded. And the decision was to give you the contract.
A standard insurance.
Standard insurance, that's right. Yeah. And it's interesting, it just, for the brokers out there who might be watching this, it really pays to get in front of people. Because if you hadn't come in there, out of sight, out of mind, we would not have thought to hire you guys, even though you're, Pizzagalley's a great contractor, and of course Landry-French is now too. So that's my first impression, and first memory of you was very favorable.
Yeah, that was over 20 years ago, Greg.
Did I have gray hair then?
You didn't. Yeah, it was over 20 years ago, and I actually remember it like it was yesterday. It was, I think that was probably my first presentation I did for Pizza Galley. And I gotta tell you, I was a little intimidated going into that meeting, and it must have been 10 or 15 people there from Boulos.
Right.
But I felt very comfortable with you folks, and 20 years later, we're still doing work with Boulos and you.
Yeah, very good relationship.
Very great relationship.
But you weren't always in construction. Now, I heard a story that you used to be a police officer.
I went to school for criminal justice, and I was in the Gunquit as a police officer.
Really?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
So you went to the academy?
I did.
And how long were you a police officer?
7 years, six or 7 years, 7 years, I believe it was.
And you left that and went to Pizza Galley?
I didn't. I left there and went to Jay Paper Mill. And I went up to Jay. So between a police officer, I was working, I had night shift, of course, because I was a rookie. And I started working part-time at a construction company during the day. Yeah. And I was making more money part-time as I was a police officer. So I filled out an application with Jay to go to the paper mill. I thought I was going to build roads and things, and for the paper company, and found that I was actually in the mill
making paper,
doing scheduling.
Oh,
I was doing scheduling for their construction, and from there it went up, and I went to work for Pizza Galley. And
it's funny how things work out. You probably didn't see yourself in the construction business when you got out of high school or when you went to the police academy.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Your partner, Denis Landry, you folks started the company together. How do you split up the work? And I'll give you my impression from the outside. It looks like you're the outside guy. You're the gregarious guy. You're the guy who takes people to dinner. That's my impression. And Denis is the inside guy who takes the deals that you put together and has to figure out how to make them work. Is that fair?
Pretty spot on. You're pretty spot on. Denis is the worker bee, no question about it. And when we formed our partnership, he's operations, business development, estimating, client relations, that type of. It's worked out awesome. Denis has got a great reputation. He's a very hard worker. I mean, Denis works 80 hours a week, I bet.
Wow.
And he's phenomenal at what he does.
Don't you think it helps a partnership when you have defined roles and you've got your expertise and your partner's got their expertise?
Absolutely. And I think Denis and I both respect each other of knowing what that divide is. And we play off it quite a bit. And I'll tell people, hey, you need to go talk to Denis about this. But we do have cross-pollination where at times have clients that we are, like Denis is very Bangor Savings. I'm very Colby and Abbott Labs.
Right.
So we kind of we'll separate on a few of them, but for the most part, that's operations, that's BD.
Yeah, and mutual respect is really important if you're going to have a successful partnership. And I know you folks have that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, Landry-French, if I'm not mistaken, is a 100% employee-owned company.
Correct.
ESOP. How does that work? I mean, if I come to work for you tomorrow, do I become an owner?
Technically, you do. After one, you have to serve for 1 year, and you go into the ESOP program, and you're given shares as the company matures. Denis and I, when we sold the company to the ESOP, we have a note. Our note's paid back over time. As that note's paid, more shares go to the employees.
So it's a gradual transition.
It's a gradual transition. It's 100%, but we have no. It's just like going to a bank and having a loan.
Right.
It's the same thing. The company owes us X amount, and as that amount's being paid off, employees get more shares. Over the last specifically 2 or 3 years, the ownership has increased a lot. The individual co-owners have gained a tremendous amount of shares.
Right. And so somebody after a year they get shares. Are they given shares or do they buy shares?
They're given shares.
Okay. And let's say employee X gets shares, he leaves after 3 years. Does he take those shares with him, or he has to sell them back to the company?
You got to sell them back. He's paid off for them, and that's what our clifting is 3 years.
Right.
So after 3 years of service, they're owed the money. If they want to leave, they get the money. But they have to give them back.
And do they get paid out over time as well when they exit, or you just spread them?
When they exit, they're given a check.
Check.
Yeah.
And how do you retain control? You've got 60 employees and everybody's an owner. I would think that could wreak havoc unless you've got controlling shares.
Dennis and I have controlling shares.
Okay.
But we also have a board of directors.
Okay.
We have trustees of the ESOP as well. So the trustees don't micromanage it, but they watch. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure it does. Yeah.
And the board of directors, we run pretty much everything through the board of directors, who give me, all right, this is your marching orders.
Oh,
Then
yeah.
we meet quarterly.
Smart way to do it.
Yeah, it works well.
To date, I believe Abbott Labs' job at 5 Bradley Drive in Westbrook has got to be one of your biggest jobs, or certainly one of the most interesting jobs. Tell us about Abbott Laboratories. Maybe I can give some background here. Abbott Laboratories was represented, or is represented, by the Boulos Company, and they needed a warehouse facility in order to start making these rapid tests for COVID-19 detection. And the pressure was on. This is right at the height of the pandemic.
It was.
And we were able to locate how big is the building? 50,000?
120,000 square feet total.
Okay. 100,000 square foot building. Used to be Olympia Sports building. And Abbott signed a lease with an outfit that was about to buy the building. Mm-hmm. And then once the lease was signed, you take it from there.
I will say it's probably the most rewarding project I've ever done in my career. Let's get that out of the way. So they signed the lease. I got a call on Sunday night. It was a Sunday night, and they said, we have a building we have to look at the next day. And do you have time to go with us? I said, certainly. So I went and looked at the building with them, and skeleton was great. I said, we're going to sign the lease. We're hoping to have it done this week. You need to be ready to go. I said, who's your architect? Who's a designer? We don't have anybody. Can you help us out with it? Certainly I can. So I called an architect that I knew, that I thought had the horsepower to do the job. And lo and behold, 4 days later on Thursday, they signed the lease, and I had 50 people in the parking lot with equipment ready to go into that building and waiting for the phone call. The phone call came.
Lease is signed.
The lease is signed, and we went in like just like a machine. And they had Olympia Sports had a company in there dismantling all their conveyor belts.
I remember, yes.
And we had the 50 people that came in there, and they're like, "Who are you guys?" And we're like, "We're coming in to take this over." And they had salvage rights.
Right.
And I said, "Hey, listen, we're going to help you take this apart. You can take it and keep your plan. We're not going to disrupt what you had planned for salvage, but we're going to get this stuff down." And about 4 or 5 days later, we had everything out of that building, and we were building walls. We had 90 days to build the project out.
And were you able to complete it in 90 days?
We completed it. We did.
On budget?
Um,
Well, they probably didn't even have a budget.
I don't think they necessarily had a budget, but having said that, we did early on. We did a budget for them of what we thought the whole project would cost, and we were almost spot on to
Really?
what we thought it would be. Yeah.
I remember you made the comment that I think you said putting that deal together, building that out, was like building a plane as you were flying it. And what did you mean by that?
And that wasn't me that said that. It was the architect that said that. And the architect, all the designers, engineers were on that site working full time. So they would actually have a drawing of because you got to imagine 120,000 square feet. There was multiple divisions within that for Abbott of different spaces, different needs. And the architect would draw it out and literally hand it off. We would take it and go within that hour, we'd stop building it.
Amazing.
It's never seen anything like it, never heard of anything like it.
Now, when you got the call on a Sunday night,
Yeah.
and you committed to building this thing in 90 days, did you really believe you could build it in 90 days? Or did you have some self-doubt that night?
I had a little self-doubt, but I had faith that I knew we could do it. Did I take my head and put it down on my hands and say, what did I just do?
Yes, you did.
I did. And I think I put my head down and say, what did you just do? Because the federal government was watching. Abbott definitely was watching. But we had federal officials down there monthly looking at the progress.
Right.
I mean, really, think about it. These COVID tests at the time, and still are, really, the whole world uses them.
Right.
And they were relying on a little company in the state of Maine to build the facility to start producing these kits. So there was a huge amount of pressure. I had a lot of confidence in the team I had there that they could do it. I personally was on that job site for 63 days straight. I never left it.
Right. Well, there was a lot of pride for me working with Abbott because of the pandemic, and you felt like you were doing something, and it must have been the same for you. You must have felt like you were doing something really good for the country.
It's unbelievable, and I still, it's the facility's been built now for almost 2 years. I still look back and I get this little smile in my head. It's like, we did that, and the confidence that it gave our company of what we can do just elevated our firm, not just a couple pegs up. It really put us way up, and as a company, I think we just said, wow, what's stopping us from doing whatever we want to do? And the answer is nothing.
We all hear about the supply chain problems that are going on right now.
Materials, yeah.
So in the construction business, how does that affect you, or has it affected you?
It absolutely has affected us. Roofing insulation. You're looking sometimes 6 to 9 months out where you could pick up a phone and call. It makes us what we can purchase up front and very quickly, we do. So it's a whole new tactic. Luckily, we have good cash flow, and we can buy these things up front, so it doesn't necessarily provide a problem with our scheduling. So it's just a different way of looking at things now.
Also, cost, with inflation now running close to 7%, you price a job. I mean, how do you keep from going in the hole? You price it out at today's dollars. Inflation is roaring. How do you get around that?
A couple of things. We all of our jobs are negotiated, for number one, so we're not going out bidding and getting stuck in that hole. Many times, Greg will put an escalation clause in our estimate, and let's say we have a 2 or 3% escalation clause. We'll show the owner, if I was working for you, I'd show you we have an escalation clause to cover us. And what we don't use goes back 100% to you. That's one way to handle it. Second way is to sign our contracts very early.
Mhm.
We used to buy, if we had a year and a half job, we'd buy our project out over 3 or 4 months. Now we buy it out over 2 or 3 weeks.
So you can know what your cost is.
We know what our costs are. We lock it down very quickly. Whatever we have to pre-buy, we put the cash out to pre-buy it. So we can lock in with the manufacturer. So if we're buying a mechanical equipment from our subcontractor, we'll buy it right out. If you have to put a deposit down, put the deposit down. We'll pay it out.
Now it's February 2022. Are you seeing any easing in the supply chain crisis?
A little bit, not a lot.
Not a lot.
Yeah, not a lot.
Hey, going back to Abbott for a second,
Yeah.
You told me a story about a Memorial Day weekend and the highway.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So Memorial Weekend, the turnpike doesn't allow oversized loads to go up the Maine Turnpike. So we needed trusses to come in for Abbott, and went for the permit, and they said absolutely not. And we pled, and no, you're not going to do it. So I said, our Abbott lab is going 24/7. There was no holidays at Abbott, and that would have actually, if we didn't get that material, it would have stopped the job. So I called the governor's office. They gave me the green light, and I went down to Peter Mills and gave him the situation. He said, absolutely. You can.
And Peter Mills is
the director of the
Maine Turnpike.
Maine Turnpike, yeah. And he said, absolutely. And I went down with a Maine State trooper and met him at the high-level bridge going from Portsmouth and Kittery. We met that load, and we drove it up with the blue lights. And actually, the New Hampshire State Police brought it from the facility that they were being built at and brought them up. So it was goosebumps, really, when that load came over that Maine Turnpike, over that bridge. It was just it gave you goosebumps. And they had a truck with a big flag on it,
yep.
American flag, and it gave you goosebumps.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to everybody doing what they can to help the cause.
And they did. Everybody stepped up.
Yeah.
There was really no resistance. And I'm sure there was some administrative person that looked at it and said, our rules say.
Yeah.
But common sense prevailed.
Yeah, it's called bureaucracy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Labor shortage. Has that affected you much? And I mean, right now it's very difficult to get labor. And true for the trades?
Very true. Very, very true. And there's no getting around it. The labor, what 4 years ago we could build in a year may take us 12, or it could take us 14 to 16 months now to do.
Right.
It's just the facts. Majority of the construction workers now are 50s and 60 years old. We don't have a lot of 20s and 30s. We have some, but it's not like what it was 30 years ago.
So you look 10 years down the road, who's going to build the buildings?
Good question.
I mean, it must be the carpenters, the plumbers, the HVAC guys.
Electricians.
I mean, those are great trades to go into. You can make a fortune.
You can make a lot of money. And my son right now, specifically my wife, is like, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. And I'm like, you can be an electrician, you can be a plumber, you can be whatever you want. Whatever trade you want to go to, you can be very successful. And some of these kids can, right out of the gate make 50, 60, 70,000. You go to college, you can come out and make 30 or 40.
Yeah, and have a couple $100,000 worth of debt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think my wife's starting to come around of thinking there's other possibilities other than you have to go to college, because that's what my parents did and their parents did. And
yep. I mean, that's what I did with my kids too. That was just the mindset.
Exactly.
Kevin, when going after new work, I understand you don't approach it as a competitive bid situation.
We do not.
How do you work it then? And how do your clients know they're getting a fair deal?
Reputation. Reputation, doing what you say you're going to do, is the big part of it.
Right.
And there's a few of us that run, I don't say run together, that negotiate all of our work. And it's, so if I was going to do a job for you and negotiate it, and you call my clients, you feel you get a fair deal.
Right.
They're going to answer yes, and you're going to feel somewhat, I know I'm going to get it. And we bid out all the work. I'll show you all the bids.
So it's open book.
It's open book.
And if it's open book, do you then say, okay, on this job, I'm going to make X%?
That's correct.
And you disclose that as well?
That's correct. We'll show you exactly what we're going to make, and we'll show the books after it's done, and
yeah,
that's how it goes.
Yeah, obviously works for you, because, I mean, you're busier than hell. I know that.
It works for us, and it works for our clients.
Right. I also, another story I heard about Landry-French is you folks have never been in court or litigation?
Never.
That's amazing.
Never.
I don't want to jinx you, by the way.
Thanks, I appreciate that. No, we haven't, and I mean, have we had issues that could possibly? But both Dennis and I say, hey, our reputation's everything. We're going to work it out. One way we'll work it out. It's not specific. It's not with our clients. It's more with subcontractors.
Sure. And don't you find that, at least I find this, the best way to handle potential conflict is, rather than call up the lawyers, sit down and meet with the person you've got an issue with and talk it out.
That's it.
Because once and I love attorneys, but once you get the attorneys involved, the talking stops, and litigators are hired to litigate, and you kind of lose control on it.
How do they make their money?
By litigating.
By litigating. And how do we make our money? By building.
By building, yeah.
So
not by sitting in a court.
Keep in your path. Keep your path. Let them litigate. Let us build. We'd rather build.
So, Kevin, when I was growing up, my father owned the E.S. Boulos company, electrical contracting,
Sure.
and I know, actually, I think they worked on the Abbott
They did.
Building. That company was sold long ago. My brothers and I, we couldn't screw in a light bulb and without getting electrocuted, so we decided to go into real estate. But I just remember, ever since I was a little kid, that was always a union shop. It's still a union shop.
Mm-hmm.
But there are very few union shops here in Maine. You're not. And I'm wondering, how do you work with a union shop, and do you see union shops coming into the state more or not?
We work with union and non-union. To us, we're open shop, and it comes down to quality and price. I don't care if you're union or non-union. Right. And all I care about is you're fair to us, and you do what you say you're going to do. So right now we have a concrete subcontractor who is union that we have on 3 projects. We have E.S. Boulos on 2 or 3 projects right now, and a few others. And good for them for being union, and good for the ones that are not. We just want a good price and the proper labor and quality to move forward with you.
And can you, do the unions have the labor issue that, say, non-unions do?
Everybody has
still
labor issues.
Because I remember my dad said you could always pull from the bench, he would say.
Yeah.
But even the bench is not really full
So
these days.
if you have people on the bench, why are they on the bench?
Right. Got it. So we've discussed Abbott, which we were both involved with. Let me list some other projects, okay?
Yeah.
And give me maybe a 30, 60-second snippet or overview of what comes to mind when I mention these projects. Now, these are projects you have completed. We'll get to some projects that you're currently working on.
Okay, sure.
191 Marginal Way, which is a convenient MD building in Portland.
That was a project that Peter Noyes.
Right.
You're bringing up these things in the past and making me spin. So Peter Noyes, I think that was probably one of his first development jobs. Yes. It was. And Paul Urenick brought me in on that. On
really?
That. Yeah, on that project.
That was just before he left.
That was just before he left. And I think actually he left during that project which he kept coming back, working for Boulos, but he was at Colby at the same time.
Yeah, we didn't want to let him go.
Yeah, I know. I can understand why. But yeah, no, that project it was a good little project right there.
Turned out well for the owner too. I mean, he was happy with
fully
Landry-French.
leased now.
It's fully leased.
Yeah.
And the tenants are doing well. So another project, Patriot Insurance Company headquarters in Yarmouth.
Link Merrill.
Yes.
So the town of Yarmouth had a new master plan. They wanted to bring their buildings closer to the road and
Parking out back.
Parking out back. So it was definitely in the light of the residents of like, why are they building it so close to the road? Why did you design it that way? One, we didn't design it. We're just building it.
Yeah.
But the project was awesome. Link to this day we have a relationship. And it was a phenomenal job. It was really very rewarding. I live like 2 miles from that building, so I see it quite often.
Yeah, I've been through that building, and it did count really, really nice.
It did.
Another one, the state of Maine DHHS buildings in Augusta and Portland.
So Portland, we did Portland. It was 6, 7, 8, maybe 8 years ago now.
And what's the address, or where's that located?
That's right by the Jetport.
So that's the one.
We had pictures of when we were putting the steel structure up where a plane was landing.
Yeah.
And they took the shot randomly. They took the shot and the plane's landing, and there's the picture. It's an awesome photo.
That's the one Chincat owns.
Eric owns that building. That's correct. And that building was
100,000 feet?
88,000 square feet. And when we got the project, they're like, oh, Landry-French, that's 88,000. They can't do that. They're over their skis. We built 88,000 square feet in 11 months.
Yeah, that was quick. And there must have been a time deadline, or
there was a time deadline, and when we got on the site, we actually found that it was a trash dump at one time. So we started digging, and here comes all this trash. So we had to figure out a plan for that quickly.
Because the soils were no good.
The soils were not good. And we learned very quickly how to remedy that and keep the project going. And the mayor of Portland he was very upset that DHHS didn't stay in Portland.
Was that Ethan?
That was Brennan.
Oh, Brennan, okay.
Yeah, and they're like, there's no way these folks can build this on time.
Well, looks like you proved them wrong.
We built it on time.
And there was one up in Augusta too?
We did one in Augusta, which is a little over 100,000 square feet.
Was that done afterwards, or?
That was done after. That was 3 years ago.
And who owns that? Do you recall?
FD Stonewater.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we just did a job for the VA.
Yep. Down on Commercial Street in Portland.
That's correct.
Which is beautiful, by the way.
It great. So the VA, they have every service known to man down there. Whether you want dentist, have a dentist work on you, hearing, everything.
How big's that building? Do you recall?
That building is 80,000 square feet.
Plus a parking garage.
Plus the parking garage.
Yeah. Colby College's Bill and Joan, Alphon Main Street Commons, Waterville.
100,000 square feet, 200 beds. And there was an apartment-style dormitory.
So the kids are some of the kids are off the hill at Colby and in Waterville,
Correct.
living there.
And they have a shuttle bus going back and forth. And really, that sparked, I feel that project sparked the whole downtown being redone.
Right.
And if you drive through downtown Waterville and look at it today versus what it was 5 years ago, you wouldn't recognize it. And all the other buildings are remodeling and having facelifts done. Right. The city looks a lot different than what it was.
I was up there last week and actually went through that building.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and it's like, this is a nice dormitory. I mean, this is not what I went to school in.
Neither one of us.
Casco Bay Ferry Terminal addition and renovation in Portland.
One we're doing now. So this is our second project down there.
Okay.
And we did one 5 years ago, and they called us back to do this second one now. And this project's, I mean, it's. I never knew how busy that terminal was till we actually started working there, and how much support that ferries give to the islands.
Oh, sure.
And without those ferries, the islands are shut down. I
It's
mean,
a long
their food, everything goes out there through the ferry terminal, and it's got a marine aspect to it too. We're doing. It's part of it sits on a dock.
So is that city owned?
That is, that's a good question, Greg. I don't know who.
It used to be privately owned.
Yeah, I don't. I know the city has something to do with it.
Who sends you the checks? We got to ask Dennis that.
Yeah, you'd have to ask Dennis that. All I know is it doesn't come up on as being a delinquent.
That's a good thing. In Gorham, I go by this every weekend when I'm heading up to Attitash, go skiing. The Harvey Performance Company's new manufacturing facility. That I think is it Josh Benthian did that.
He did.
And Rex Bell.
Yeah, Northland Properties.
Yes.
Yes. Good projects. Our first project we did with Northland, actually.
Yeah.
We have one currently under construction with them right now. But that was our first project, and great job. And actually, Harvey brought us down to Massachusetts to work their facility down there. And they had projects going currently, concurrent with ours in Gorham. They had one going in Massachusetts with a different contractor. And they said, what a difference. And the second one they did in Raleigh, we're down there now building. So it worked out pretty well.
Well, when they've got another contractor doing a similar job, it probably gives you a chance to shine.
It does.
Really.
Shine or fail.
Right.
And we shined. But the Harvey is a great project to talk about. We were under construction when COVID hit.
With what?
COVID.
Oh.
That's when the pandemic started, and we were in the middle of that project. And people were hiding, not coming to work. How were we going to keep that project on schedule?
And in your contracts, you probably didn't have a pandemic provision.
We didn't know what a pandemic was.
Yeah, I bet you going forward there'll be a lot of those provisions.
There's a few.
Public safety buildings for the towns of Berwick, Yarmouth, Wells, and Scarborough.
Wells was our first one, and then went like dominoes after
Are these
that.
like fire department?
Fire department, police, which I think maybe a little my first job maybe helped, and actually it did, because I understand what internals of a police department needs to be. And I see it on drawings and say, this doesn't make sense. And you raise a question, why is it drawn this way? And they're like, the police would look at it and say, it doesn't make sense, and they'd change it. Yeah. And we've done 4 in the last 4 or 5 years, and we got a couple more coming.
Yeah, so the fact that you were a policeman at one time, you know what to look for.
Some, yeah.
Yeah.
And things have changed a lot, trust me. And
sure.
I've been doing this now for 25, 28 years, and things have changed, but at the same time, your mind doesn't change. You're still thinking cop.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so now let's switch over to some of the new projects that are currently under construction. I think this is really exciting. And, I drive around Portland, I drive around Greater Portland, I go up the Waterville. Your signs are everywhere. And so obviously you're really busy. 201 Federal Street. This is going to be an 18-story apartment building at the corner of Federal and Temple in Portland. When I come into work in the morning at Canal Plaza, I come up Temple Street, and there's the biggest crane I've ever seen in Portland standing there. I come in, I get in early, it's dark, but that crane is lit up. What's going on over there, and how long is it going to take? And
it's going to be about 16 months. It's 18 stories, 260 apartments. It's
tallest building in Maine, right?
It will be the tallest building in Maine. Right now they proposed the roof on it's going to be a little bit taller.
I did see that in the paper today. But it's going to be 18 stories, and Franklin Arterial right now is the tallest at 16 stories, I think.
That's correct. That's correct.
And, I'm sure people look at that site and say, how the hell did they ever build it on such a postage stamp? But when you have an urban infill, that's what happens.
That's what happens. I mean, you think about it, in Boston, New York, this isn't, we're not inventing this.
Yeah.
This is, you get into there's only so much land. And
But that presents certain challenges too, in terms of laydown areas for your construction material and in your cranes and.
basically, when it comes in the truck, it goes up. It flies up. We unload the trucks and it goes right into place.
Yeah.
So having logistics that you need to think about, my delivery is coming. What am I going to do with that? You need to think that out.
Yeah.
And the team that you put on those projects need to have that mindset of, we know how to properly plan.
Yeah, you don't want the beam for the 18th floor showing up when you're on the 4th floor.
No.
Okay.
You don't have any room to put it.
Hobson's Landing, Phase 2 in Portland. That's a new 7-story, 160,000 square foot condominium project featuring 64 units with a parking on the 1st and 2nd floor. It's right across from Becky's.
Right. Yeah.
Commercial Street.
Pretty high visibility place to be building. And it's our 3rd project for that owner. And now I like high visibility jobs. It gives you time to shine. And some people don't like the pressure or worried about making mistakes. We don't worry
about that.
We don't worry about that. We worry, I think it's a great opportunity that's why I think it's part of why you see our signs around, because we like high visibility jobs and, people know who we are.
Yeah, be proud of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the one you're building right now is next to some condos that have been finished. You didn't do those, right?
We did not do those.
And then there's a hotel on the other side.
Correct. We didn't do that either.
When you're completed, is that whole project is completed?
It is.
Okay. And that used to be the old Rufus Deering lumber site.
Yeah, great. That's right.
Well, that's a great project. You got to help me with this pronunciation. Paul J. Schrumpf?
Chef. Yeah.
Paul J. Chef, Art Center, Waterville. 32,000 square foot hub for visual arts, performing arts, artists, education, and film for children and adults, downtown Waterville.
That's for Colby College.
For Colby.
Yeah, that's for Colby. So this is our 3rd project. We went to Colby for the Bill and Joan Alphonse Center 5 years ago. We haven't left. So my team that I have never left there. So we're on our 3rd project. Paul Urenick is their representative up there that we work for, and it's a great project. And Colby just hired us for another project on campus. So we're there. This project and projects they have coming up, we'll probably be there for another 5 or 6 years.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great client. That's connected to the Opera House, I think.
It is correct. There's a bridge, sky bridge that goes over to the
Nice.
Opera House.
Project that we're both familiar with, 65 Gannett Drive in South Portland, 15,000 square foot addition onto an existing 35,000 square foot renovation for Abbott Laboratories. It's lab and office space. So we represented Abbott again, found this building, which J.B. Brown owns.
Yeah.
Leased it to them, but they needed an addition put on
Correct.
for their lab, and then take it from there.
Yeah, so Vin Verino, J.B. Brown, who is actually involved in the VA Center down Commercial.
Right. He owns the ground.
That's correct.
Yeah, ground lease.
Yeah, correct. And so Vin brought us in on that, and of course, Abbott's a current client, so everything came together, and it's 50,000 square foot lab and office space.
But the whole building itself is closer to what, 50?
About 50,000.
50,000 square feet. Yeah. And lastly, Travis Mills Foundation Health and Wellness Center. Where is that?
It's up in Rome, Maine.
Yep.
And so Travis Mills, they have the retreat for the wounded veterans.
Right.
And so we're doing it's got an indoor pool, fitness center, and just what a rewarding project that is to have Travis Mills as a client, and a lot is donated, a lot of materials donated, a lot of labor donated.
Maybe you could explain who Travis Mills is.
Yeah, he's an amputee, and
From the war in Afghanistan?
Afghanistan or Iraq,
Iraq.
one of them. And he's a motivational speaker. And if you ever have the opportunity to watch some of Travis's podcasts or his speaking, he's just so inspirational. It's incredible.
There's a term that I've heard used with you folks, and I don't know what it means, so bear with me, but it's called lean construction methods. I'm assuming you know what that means.
Yeah.
And if you do, can you tell us?
I can tell you, a little about lean. And lean is just efficient in building, communicating. All the subs are on board. So back early in the day, you'd look at the sub and say, "You're going to do it this way, and I don't care what you say. I don't want your opinion.
Just
do it." Now the subs are involved, and they give what their timeline is to do their particular thing, and it all goes on paper. And they say, "All right, I'm going to be out of this area next Friday." Well, Monday comes, and they're not out of that area. They need to more or less report out and say, "I didn't finish," because the next trade needs to come in when they finish. And now that next trade can't come in because they didn't do their work. They're held accountable.
Is it more collaborative?
Very. The day of slamming your fist down and say you're going to do it, those days are gone.
That's how it was with my father in the electrical contracting business. It was just a different era.
It's the way it was done 10 years ago. And things have just changed. And going back to your question you had earlier about labor shortages, if you don't work together, you're not getting anything done.
Right. Because they can walk across the street and go someplace else.
Absolutely.
In Maine, going back to the pandemic, in Maine at the start of the pandemic, Governor Mills declared construction companies essential businesses, which meant you were able to continue to work more or less normal operations, unlike Massachusetts and New York and other places where they had work stoppages. I'm just wondering, were you able to attract workers from those states to help you out while you were going gangbusters?
We did, specifically for Abbott out on Bradley Drive. And so Abbott, we had Bradley Drive. We also had a major project that started up at Southgate in Scarborough for them.
10 Southgate.
Yep. So we brought a mechanical company in from New York that was shut down because they couldn't work. We brought them in, and they did that whole job. So we didn't have the labor in the state of Maine to do it. Not two massive projects at once. Was just there wasn't enough people in the state of Maine to do it.
So that really was a godsend that she labeled you essential businesses construction.
Correct. Which for Abbott, if she did, Abbott still would have built, because that came under the U.S. emergency and get it done.
Yeah. Well, I think Abbott had a line literally right to the White House.
They did.
If there's any problem, it got solved immediately.
So we had some material problems. The call was made. Material was on the way. Simple as that.
Wouldn't you love it if it was that easy all the time?
I wish I still had the number.
So in closing, Kevin, by the way, I've really enjoyed this conversation, but in closing, you're a young guy, you're what, 56?
58.
58, okay. Well, you're not as young as I thought. But we were talking before we started taping here, and I mean, you've got the energy and you love what you do, and you're probably going to be doing this a long time. But what's on the horizon for you personally and also Landry-French?
Landry-French, I want to see the growth continue. People, I hear this, you've grown too fast. We haven't. We grow with our people. And as we continually are growing, we're continually attracting new help new talent, and as our talent improves, we're going to continue to grow. Where I see that going, we're pretty much spot on where we thought it would be 3 years ago. So our growth is very
Planned.
very planned, and I can tell you that we're in 3 years. If you and I have this conversation again, you're going to say, "Wow!"
Because when you grow, if you don't have the systems in place, you can get in trouble.
You can get in trouble. I think you could get in trouble very quickly.
Right.
And I don't want to grow. I want to grow well.
Yeah, and you want to be profitable.
I want to be profitable. I mean, we're an ESOP. We owe it to people coming on and people that are here to be profitable. I look at the ESOP as another 401k. So
Right.
each co-owner of the company, basically, you just don't have a 401k. You have the 401k and the ESOP when you retire. And me personally, I can't say I have a plan to leave. When I'm not having fun, I'm going to leave. But right now, I'm just having a blast.
I tell people if they find me at my desk in the morning and I'm dead, you know I went happy. Anyway, Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Kevin, I want to thank you for being our guest today on the Boulos Beat, a Boulos Company podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. You can learn about Landry-French Construction at the company's website, which is www.landryfrenchconstruction.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Landry-French Construction. And if you'd like to learn more about the Boulos Company, please be sure to visit us at www.boulos.com. You can also find us at the Boulos Company on Facebook and at LinkedIn and at the Boulos Co. on Instagram and Twitter. And lastly, if you want to know the secret to owning real estate, it's pretty simple. Just be sure to outlive your debt.